Shelter information for migrants entering via parole in San Diego. Are you a migrant in Tijuana who will be entering the U.S. via humanitarian parole? Did you know that there is a shelter for migrants entering the U.S. via San Diego? The San Diego Rapid Response Network, SDRRN Migrant Shelter, is a short-term shelter located in San Diego that welcomes migrants who are entering the U.S. and need a short-term place to stay while they figure out their next steps and travel plans. The shelter is optional. No one is required to go to the shelter if they do not want to go. It is not a detention center, and you can leave at any time. Sometimes immigration officials will inform you about this option, and sometimes they forget to do so. However, even if the immigration officer does not mention this shelter as an option, you can still request to go to the SDRRN migrant shelter. To make this request, you must communicate to the immigration officer that you want to join the bus that will be leaving the port of entry to the shelter run by the non-governmental organization, or NGO. If you inform the immigration officials that you want to go to the NGO shelter, after they finish processing you, the immigration officials will walk you to meet the NGO shelter staff. The NGO shelter staff will guide you onto a bus which will take you to the migrant shelter. If you do not inform the immigration officials that you would like to go to the NGO shelter, you will exit immigration processing onto the street in San Diego and be responsible for coordinating your own travel to your final destination. You can inform the immigration officer that you want to go to the NGO shelter at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end of your interview. Again, going to the shelter is optional. It is not a requirement, and even if you come to the shelter and decide that you want to leave, you may do so at any time. What can I expect from the shelter? Remember that this shelter is only short-term or temporary stays. Migrants typically stay at the shelter for just a few days. The shelter is a space for everyone, regardless of their faith or religion. When arriving at the shelter, their medical team will assist you and your family members with general medical screening and a COVID test. Once you are in the shelter, a staff member will provide an orientation about the resources they are able to provide. The shelter will help you contact your friends or family in the U.S. The shelter will ask you brief information about your travel plans to your final destination in order to assist you. It is important to remember that you and/or your family are guests and are not required to stay in the shelter. If you wish not to continue with SDRRN and its services, you and your family members can leave. However, you will not be able to return with SDRRN. What if I or any of my family members tested positive for COVID-19 at the shelter? If you or any of your family members test positive, SDRRN will provide a room in a different hotel to quarantine. The quarantine timeline will depend on when you or any of your family members tested negative for COVID-19. Once you or any of your family members have tested negative, the shelter will resume helping you and your family members to book travel to your final destination. Reminder: if you do not have any family or friends with whom you can stay with in the U.S., this shelter will help you find other organizations where you can stay for a longer period of time. Thank you. Al otro lado.